Good afternoon and welcome to this fifth edition of the EQ Lunch and Learn. My name is Mucha Mlingo and I will be your host this afternoon. I'm really excited about the conversation that we are going to be having with my fantastic panelists today. Maybe once upon a time, probably in a world before coronavirus, there was little need to actively learn the skill of emotional intelligence. But in this world of growing complexity, as we adjust into life after COVID, emotional intelligence has become an essential skill. The EQ Lunch and Learn series aims to provide employees with insight on how they can utilize emotional intelligence as a skill to successfully navigate the challenges and changes that they face. It's a monthly series, and we tackle very many topics that are really aligned with what employees need to be able to thrive at work. Today's episode number 5, is facing forwards, and not just facing forwards, but facing forwards with boldness. Following one of the most eventful years in living memory, many of us breathed a sigh of relief when 2020 finally came to an end. And then came January with her New Year's resolutions, planning, and goal setting, because that is what January is made of. But as we face this new reality that is 2021, how can we prepare for what lies ahead when there is still so much uncertainty? Today, with my guests, we're going to explore why it's important to set goals for your career and plan for the future, even when the future is uncertain. We're also going to look at why most people fail to achieve the goals they set. It's said that we set New Year's resolutions, and by February, we've fallen off the wagon. So how can we make sure we set goals that go beyond just being smart? And how can we utilize emotions in order to propel ourselves forward? As I mentioned, I have 3 amazing guests that I'm really excited to have with me today. My first guest, I did apologize to her in advance. I am really struggling to pronounce her name properly. Tikida, and I know I've just murdered it, but she's given me the permission to call her C. And so for the remainder of the program, that is what I am going to do. I'm going to call her C, and I'll ask her when she joins us to actually say her name properly, because I know I didn't quite do it right. So I'm really excited to have her. C is a chemical engineer. She has a master's in petroleum engineering, and she's a co-founder of a leadership podcast called As You Lead. She is a Fulbright scholar, a former McKinsey consultant, and the new business lines lead for Uber Eats. Really excited to have you here. C is a renowned speaker in the field of STEM. Amongst other speaking engagements, she was invited as a keynote at the Anglo-American endorsed EWB Leadership Retreat. Her topics of interest include personal leadership and mastering one's career in the advent of the 4th Industrial Revolution. So I know that she is exactly the right person to be here and have this conversation with us. Welcome very much, C. Really good to have you with us today.
Thanks, Mucha. I'm excited for this conversation.
Awesome. If you'd like to connect with C, learn more about her, please connect with her on LinkedIn. I also have with me Jemima Faye Goodall. From an early age, it was clear that Jemima was going to be an entrepreneur. Her determination to be a brand builder and business owner made this practically a foregone conclusion. She has now been a business owner for over 10 years, starting her first company when she was 26 and her second before she turned 30. Jemima is passionate, and I know this from experience, about passing on skills and her love for entrepreneurship. She has especially focused on helping to empower and motivate women to take control of their lives. And she has worked with many business owners as a mentor, as a coach. Jemima holds a philosophy of taking brave action, and that launching your own company can be in reach if you can be bold. So welcome to the conversation, Jemima. Really, really great to have you here. If you'd like to connect with Jemima, I'm also going to share her Instagram page. Hi, Jemima.
Hi, Mocha. Very excited to be here today. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much. And last but not least, I have with me Jackie Ogonji. Really excited to have her share her expertise as well. Jackie is the Vice President, Human Resources at SBM Bank in Kenya. She is a passionate senior business partner with 11 years of consistent experience in human resources and administration environment. She is dedicated, to drive high performance cultures from both structured and unstructured settings by influencing business objectives through tactical, strategic, and operational partnerships, policies, and governance. It sounds like a mouthful, but what I can tell you is that Jackie is all about people, and we're really excited to have her here. If you'd like to learn more about Jackie and connect with her, you can connect with her on LinkedIn. Jackie, you're very welcome today.
Thank you, Mucha. Thank you, and it's lovely to be here.
Awesome. So, ladies, let's jump right in. I am really looking forward to the conversation that we are going to have. And as we come to the end of January, I'm sure many individuals, those who are tuned in and those who will watch this later, have spent some time thinking about how to plan for 2020. So what I'd like to ask, the first question I'd like to ask is, your philosophy on goal setting, and, especially considering the year that was last year. So Jackie, let me just start with you since I just brought you on. Please share with us your philosophy on goal setting, your philosophy on New Year's resolutions, more particularly considering the fact that we've had a crazy year.
Well, thank you, Mucha. Ideally, I'm one of the people who passionately and religiously write down resolutions and goals at the beginning of the year. And it's quite an exciting topic because I think last week we were also dealing with a different team on personal development. And I just did a poll to identify how many people achieved their 2020 goals. So you've got a mix of people saying, I didn't achieve them because of COVID. So COVID has become really a reason for everything. But you have guys who went beyond what they had wanted to achieve and are at around 120, 150%. And this is because they allowed themselves to make some changes to their goals so that they could be able to achieve something that is contributing to that goal that they wanted to contribute to. So I think for me, goal setting is getting you organized, and it's quite an important factor for me. And I usually say that it keeps you focused, keeps you motivated, keeps you alive, because that's the only way you know that things are moving. But if you make your goals smart, then you know that there are times that you need to also change them. They're not meant to be static from January to December. If something is not happening, then you need to change. And that's why you have got people who made a kill out of 2020, and there are those ones who still were stuck at 0 and 25%. So it's just how creative you are.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Jackie. Jemima, let me come to you. What are your thoughts on goal setting and New Year's resolutions, more particularly when you consider the year that was 2020?
So, hi guys. Much I don't need to tell you, I'm a huge advocate of setting goals and having very clear intentions for a new year. So I'm a big fan. I shy away from the word resolutions for some reason. I feel like that term has has a bit of a stigma attached because people tend not to stick to their New Year's resolutions. So I always come into a new year, I guess you could call it resolutions, but I come into a new year with a very clear idea of what I want to do more of, what worked in the previous year, and what I want to do less of, what didn't work. So that always means that there's an audit. I do an audit on the past year and really get clear on the things that worked and the things that didn't. So I'm a huge advocate of that. The thing with New Year's resolutions is I feel like people set them because they want to change something about their external environment, but they don't really go deep enough. And that's why people tend to fall off the wagon, right? And as far as goal setting goes, as Jackie said, I think it's critically important because I think that is the way that we all go into a new year with very clear intentions, and we take action with intention, and we speak with intention. And I think that having clear intentions for your year, having clear intentions for everything you do and say is the only way that we fully live our lives. If we're making the most of every moment and everything, as I say, everything we speak life into. And so I think it's critically important for living a full life, fully embodying who we are, is to be super intentional. And the way to be super intentional is to have clear goals. So yeah, that's my feeling on goal setting.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Jemima. C, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I agree with the ladies. And I think something to add that I sort of added to my process. I think this was 2019 and also 2020 with all the changes. And I think like touching into the emotional aspect, I think what I started doing with regards to my goal setting is usually my goal setting was very external, right? Like these are my goals. I want to achieve this, smash that, etc. But I found that having those external goals, especially in an environment that I can't control, was actually not good for me emotionally, right? And it was extremely anxiety inducing, and it led to burnout, actually. And so I sort of changed my goals to say, like, who do I want to become, right? And I think that's also an important element of goal setting. I think resolutions are less about, or should be less about, the external goal, but like the lifestyle I actually want to have. And I think I listened to a podcast where they had Simon Sinek as a guest, and he's written this book around, not setting a goal so that you achieve it, but actually setting a lifestyle. I think it's The Infinite Mindset. That's the book, The Infinite Mindset. And that's where I started realizing that if I say I want to lose 7 kilograms in weight, that shouldn't be the goal. The goal is to be healthier and sustainably have a healthy lifestyle that makes me happier. And if it's, with my career to get promoted, my goal was actually to be someone who is actually operating at an optimal level and leading those that work with me, right? And that resulted in a promotion. So I think I sort of changed my approach. And I think that's how I sort of approach goal setting now. It's more becoming than it is achieving.
I love that. Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. C, Jemima, I want to come back to you because I think C's the point that C's made really kind of ties in with a question I want to ask you. And when we think about goal setting, what is the main reason why we fail to achieve our goals? And you spoke about the idea that we set New Year's resolutions, and you said you don't really like the term resolution. We set New Year's resolutions, and somehow we don't actually seem to be able to follow through on them. So can you just talk to us a little about what some of the challenges are and why we often don't manage to achieve the goals that we've set, whatever we're calling those goals?
Yeah, sure. So I have 2 answers to this question. I have two streams of thought around it. The one is very similar to what C was just saying. And the thing that I see the most, the mistake that I see most people making, is they set goals that they can't control. And so what I coach people to do and really, really try to help people to do is set goals that produce the outcome that they're looking for. So the goal is not the outcome itself. The goal needs to be the action that you can take, right? A binary action that's either been done or not done. And that's where I see most people struggling, and they get defeated, or they start to feel defeated because they're not reaching a goal. So in my industry, I'm working with a lot of business owners. So often those goals are financial goals, revenue goals, right? And no matter what you do, you can't control how many people swipe their credit cards with your company. You can't control it. You can't control how many people sign up to your email list. You can't control how many people follow you on Instagram. You can't force them to do it. So I refer to those sorts of goals as targets rather, and our targets inform our goals. And I think that's the mistake that a lot of people make, is they set goals that they have no control over. And while I think it's important to have the targets, we've got to look at the actions that cause those outcomes. So that's the first mistake I think that people make when setting goals. The second thing, which comes back to what I said at the beginning, is people don't go deep enough, right? So there's something in their external environment they want to change. We've all got, a level of EQ that allows us to know that we have the power to change that if we change our behavior. And that's where people stop. So they go, there's something in my environment, like the example that C gave, I want to lose weight. I'm not happy with my weight. So I'm going to change something about my behavior to change my weight. And that's where they stop, and that's where they take action. And then a few weeks later, they've fallen off the wagon. And what people don't understand is, if we look at human behavior as a triangle, as steps up a ladder, and your environment is at the top and your behavior is below that, there's still 3 levels below, right? There's your capabilities, there's your belief, and then there's your identity. And what people are not doing is they're not going further down that ladder and exploring their beliefs and exploring their identities and exploring the things that are influencing the actions that they're taking or the habits that they have. And that's also where I think people really struggle, is they don't do that work. And we have to do that work if we want to change our behavior and we want to create new habits. We have to explore what our beliefs are. We have to explore what we believe about ourselves. We have to explore where our identity is coming from. And so that's what I feel, to answer your question. I think those are the 2 primary reasons people don't reach their goals, is they're setting goals they can't control, and they're not exploring their identity and their beliefs that inform their behaviors.
I love that. I love the conversation we're having. I think 2020 definitely highlighted to many of us the importance of going deep and getting to what we are and who we are at our core, and understanding how that actually ultimately impacts our behavior. See, how has COVID affected your planning process? And, what advice would you give to young people who are feeling anxious about the year ahead and really struggling to get motivated about planning when there is so much uncertainty?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And I think I completely agree with Jemima, because I think that is an approach that I had to take in COVID. So I think my approach was very much, I do it in the beginning of the year, and I sort of have a check-in at the end of the year, because I have it top of mind what my goal is, right? But I think during COVID, so many things changed so fast. I lost my whole team. I lost my manager within a day. So many things changed so quickly. I think I got married, which is a positive thing. I moved houses, I think 3 times, but there were so many changes in my life, positive and negative, that I couldn't have that, key focus anymore, And so what I did in my process is I actually, allowed myself another mid-year break to plan, right? And I think I actually wrote a newsletter about this. I took a week off, and I think I invested in just that process that Jemima was saying in planning, right? Because I think the insight I had was that when we work in companies and we work in teams, etc., companies really invest in that strat planning, portion of the year. They take you guys out, you have a team build, etc. But very rarely do we do that for ourselves. Very rarely do we stop and say, what is my strat plan for my life right now, given this context, right? So I did a sort of like a pause, and I just took a week off from work, and I went away to a hotel, and I treated myself like my company would have treated me. And I literally got a boardroom in the hotel, and I planned, right? And I went really deep to say, what are my values? When I look at my vision statement for my life, what do I want people to say about me? What are my stories? And I realized that all these changes that had happened over the years had actually sort of altered the story that I had about myself, and sort of, what are the things that I'm committing to in order to change that story, in order to achieve my goals. So I think I followed that modus to say, let me commit to an hour a week in investing in myself. Let me commit to a book club. Let me commit to learning leadership through a podcast I founded, As You Lead with a friend. Let me commit to things that will ultimately change the way I think about, certain elements in my life. And I can commit an hour to each based on, or different hours based on what I value the most, and sort of use that time in order to see the results. So that's how I sort of worked around it. Unfortunately, I had to burn out before I got there, which is not good. But it is something that I sort of, recommend that people do. And I think a good indicator for people who may not be realizing that it's time to actually reset is your health. I think your health is a very strong indicator of where you are emotionally and where your life is heading. And if your health is starting to, not run as smoothly as per usual, I think it is a sign that you need to pause and reflect and sort of press the reset button to say, am I still on track, or what is the new track for my life, and sort of determine that.
I love it. I am really, really loving this conversation that we are having. And I agree with you 100% that the same way that an organization would invest in, making sure that the strategy is still the direction, that they're still moving in the direction of the strategy, or making changes when circumstances occur. I mean, there's many of us who, like you say, were impacted in many ways by COVID. And how many of us actually stopped to take stock of what impact COVID had made and how we could reassess our goals and how we could replan in light of COVID. And it really speaks to what Jackie said earlier, that, it's important for individuals to be able to make that shift. Jackie, let me come to you. I'd like to get your take on a similar question. Why is it important to set goals for your career and plan for the future, even in the midst of uncertainty?
So pretty interesting. If you listen to the conversation, you'll find that you really connect with yourself to be able to get these things done. So Jemima has said, we need to get deeper. C has said something pretty beautiful, things that something that I also took time through, but I didn't go as deep as C did. She actually set time for herself and invested by just doing her own board meeting. That's a brilliant tip there, C. But if you listen to the conversations from the speakers, we're talking about investing in ourselves, right? So when you want your career to prosper, then the first step is you must invest in yourself. And investing in yourself is the time, investing in yourself is the commitment, it is the accountability, it is the authentic focus, in reality. And we have said that, yes, if I want to get somewhere, I need to start from what is within my control. So we like to make beautiful writings about certain things, but are you really going to get there? So you need to be real with yourself. That's why it's very important for you to start with yourself, because you will realize that there's a lot that you need to do from yourself before you think about that career growth. First, you need to focus on yourself. So you need to do things like Johari Window, understand what you know about yourself, what other people know about yourself. And I usually say at the beginning of the year, it might be nice to find out from a few people what they can say about you. She said, what's your vision? And whenever you're doing something, it needs to be aligned to your vision. Otherwise, you find that you get bored in the middle of the year. So for me, I'd say, yes, start investing in yourself, because that gives you the opportunity to then write down things that are realistic, have options in case this doesn't work. For example, if you have a financial goal, there's something interesting called a 52-week challenge. I personally, last year, I didn't do so well in my 52-week challenge. So I got somewhere and I stopped. Then what did I say this year? Options. I said the minimum I should be able to contribute on my 52-week challenge should be X, and my maximum best case scenario is Y. So despite anything, I need to make sure that I hit the minimum. Have options so that you keep going. Reward yourself. Do you have an accountability partner? And then what are you doing out of the ordinary? Because you really have to be creative. That is one of the things that you need to do. Because if you set career goals, they are meant to enhance you, increase efficiency, knowledge, get an increment. But then, so if you put these things in place, then you must be able to motivate yourself and to be accountable. So you need to have a partner who is accountable for this, and you can always tell them. Then it makes you track. If I know that I've got to tell Jemima something at the end of the month, for sure I'll do it. And you see it's going to contribute to something. So have that one person so that you can be able to follow through your career goals. And your career goals need to be realistic. You're not going to be the CEO in the next 2 years, for example. So be realistic, have options, write them down, have an accountability partner, but most of all, you must invest in yourself. So if you say it's 1 hour a day, please stick to it. If you need a reminder, just make sure that you get a reminder. And that will help you going, that will keep you motivated, and you will be able to achieve your goals. At least you will be somehow better each year. And then it becomes a habit, and you grow that habit to become something that you permanently do.
Thank you very much, Jackie, for your thoughts. I think what I'm hearing from all three of you is that even though the future is uncertain, it is imperative that we set goals for ourselves. And what I'm hearing very clear is that those goals need to start with working on ourselves. We're not going to be able to achieve much for ourselves if we have not worked on ourselves and taken the time to go deeper, as Jemima had earlier said, and do the work of understanding who you really are at your core. This is a fabulous conversation. If you've just joined us, you are very welcome. And we will have a section where we'll ask for your questions. Feel free to share your questions on whatever platform it is that you are tuned in from. Jackie, I want to stay with you as we continue the conversation. In many organizations, leadership is stuck in survival mode. Organizations are trying to navigate and deal with the impact that the pandemic had on them. How can employees ensure that they themselves have an abundance mindset and still cast big, hairy, audacious goals and visions, even if they work in an environment where the focus is just survival and the next deal? How do you make sure that you don't get dragged down to the mindset of those around you who may just be working or focusing on just surviving?
So why would I be dragged down? Because I don't have any goals. I don't know what I'm meant to do. I'm just there. So because I'm just there, I have no reason to go over and above to do anything extraordinary. I will still hide around. The leaders themselves are just there. So you must have goals. You must have a path. You must have a map. You must know, what exactly do I want to do? So don't depend on anyone else to draw your map, because if you then feel that it's not working for you, then options. What are your options? So it starts with you. As a person, don't be dragged down, because you do have certain goals, even in your career, within your role. There are specific things, processes that you have seen, perhaps that needs to be improved. Start putting that in place. Talk to your peers in the industry. Find out what they're doing differently. Recommend to your line managers that, you know what, I researched about this. This is what I think we should do. Do you want to have a look at it and present it to the management? And it's going to be taken. So it doesn't matter whether other people are still on the survival mode. It doesn't matter whether your leader is on the survival mode. What matters is that you have taken an initiative to improve something and make it better despite the condition or despite the environment that you are. Then avoid distractors. So the distractors can be anything. And distractors are basically there to make you not move. So that is why you need to have a mindset that is looking at growth and that is looking at solutions. So your culture internally should be that to a culture that makes things better than how you found them. And if you do that, it doesn't matter where the organization is, because you will try at all risks to avoid distractors that you are finding along your path. And these distractors are there. They can be time-wasting initiatives like just taking your phone and watching a movie just because it's, I've been given a very boring task by my boss, so the best thing is let me watch a movie. You could have gone to Udemy and found a course, searched for a free course around the topic of the boring assignment that you were given and gotten more insights, and then the task becomes a little more exciting. So avoid distractors. If you know the movies are your number one distractors, just make sure that it's not on your phone, right? Block specific timings that you can create time to watch those movies. And then be energized. She said something around your health status tells you a lot of things. It's a telltale sign. It's a warning. So if you're not energized, then you need to, switch off the button, take time off, and go and reset yourself and bring yourself back better. Because if then you don't do that, you will always stay at the same mode that the rest of the people are in. And to be energized, that it simply means that you also have to invest in your health. What are you eating? Are you exercising? Are you taking breaks? You just need to do things that will make you energized at all the time. And negative conversations don't help. There's several distractors that we can get along the way. People who don't give solutions, it doesn't help. And then you yourself, self-awareness. You need to know that at this point, what I'm doing is wrong. Yeah. First, you need to convince yourself. Because if you then stay on a job that you're not adding value just because of the leaders, then you need to identify that it's the right time that I'm bored. It's the right time to decide what I need to do. So self-awareness, take time to invest in self-awareness and expand. It's one thing to be self-aware, but you need to expand. Don't be content with what you know. You need to keep casting your net wider to be able to know yourself further. And by you doing this, people know you better, you build your networks, and you open yourself up for greater opportunities. So don't get distracted to stay stuck in a survival mode just because everyone else is. Do the extraordinary things, which are simple things. Remember, I've just said, just go to Udemy, search for free courses. You will get something. Read about it. Just ask your friends. I'm changing a form. What do you have on your form? Do you want to share? Can we just discuss about it? You can change something that can actually add a lot of value to the business. So you just need to be a leader in doing something different. And then that makes you excited about moving to the next level. You never know. It might be the next big deal for your institution. So don't stick on that mode as an individual.
I love that. I love the idea of doing extraordinary things on a daily basis. Whoever imagined that changing the formatting of a form could be something that's extraordinary, and yet it could be something that's extraordinary. Jemima, I could see you nodding and smiling. Would you like to add to what Jackie has said? How can individuals ensure that they have an abundance mindset and cast those big, hairy, audacious goals, even when it seems like, oh my gosh, 2021 is just like 2020? How do we make sure that we maintain that abundance mindset?
So I loved everything that Jackie was saying, and I think this is such a good question, Mucha, and I think the reason that I was nodding along was because this is a question that I answer for myself all the time, and for the women that I work with, but not necessarily from the place of an employee within an organization. But I think the same question of, as an individual or a business owner, what do you do with people around you? Maybe you have a husband at home who doesn't feel the same way about abundance or mindset work and is getting caught up in the drama, or maybe you have a parent who really impacts the way that you're feeling. So I think this question really goes beyond just, within your organization, and that's what I would love to just speak on for a moment. And much the same as what Jackie said, I think it starts with you. And I always say to myself, and I say to the people that I work with, or I have to say to myself sometimes throughout the day in my head, is keep your side of the street clean. And it starts with you, right? And you can impact the thoughts and the feelings and the mindset of the people around you by being that person first, right? And so, yeah, as I said, I think, keep your side of the street clean is the best way to sum it up. And take that time every day to do that abundance mindset work, to do the work on getting into a high vibe, a high energy state, because don't discount how much influence you can have over other people just by being a certain way. And the energy that we have does impact a room. We've all been in a situation where somebody walks in and they're, high vibe and they're amazing and you can't help but get excited about the future. Or somebody walks into the room and you're like, oh my goodness, this person makes me want to go and take a nap. So don't discount that, and you get to choose every day who you are. And once you've built up that resilience, once you've built up your state of abundance and your mindset, your abundance mindset, it would take a lot for that to get penetrated by somebody else. It takes a lot. If you're doing that work on yourself all day, every day, if you've got those affirmations going on in your head or whatever it is, you're reading, you're journaling, you're doing that work every day, you're going to get stronger and stronger, and it's going to be more and more difficult for external influences and external factors to influence that state that you're in. And so that's what I always say to people is check yourself first. Check yourself first. It starts with you. Don't worry about what other people are doing or saying. As Jackie said, keep yourself out of negative conversations. Keep yourself out of negative situations as far as possible. But keep your side of the street clean.
I think that's going to be one of my quotes of the day. Keep your side of the street clean. Fantastic. Jemima, just thinking more around this concept of, mindset. You and I have had very many conversations about mindset and emotions. How important is this when setting goals? I mean, we're not all rational beings. I mean, why are my emotions relevant?
So I think it is critically important, Mucha, you know this. I think it's critically important, the role that mindset and emotions play in your ability to set goals. And I'll tell you why. The biggest thing I think is that people forget, as I said earlier, people forget to look at their beliefs. And I think if you have limiting beliefs and you have negative self-talk going on in your head, which we all do, you can't possibly manifest your desires. You just can't, right? And so I think that is the one reason I think it's so important, because if there's even a hint of self-doubt in your mind about the things that you want or the things that you desire, you're not going to achieve them. And like I said just now about the energy and the vibe that you're giving off, right? Like attracts like, okay? So if we go into the law of attraction and manifestation, like attracts like. And I can guarantee the things that you want, everyone listening, everyone on this call, the things that you want, the things that you desire in your life, they're high vibe things. You want high vibe relationships. You want high vibe opportunities. You want high level of success. You have to match those vibrations. And the only way you're going to do that is by checking your mindset and your emotions every single day, every minute of every day, right? Checking that stuff. And so that's it, right? It comes down to the vibe. It comes off to the vibration, the frequency that you're vibrating at, the energy that you're giving off, and the way that you feel about yourself. Mucha, we talk a lot. You and I've had many conversations about self-worth and working on that stuff, and a bunch of inner child work and all of that kind of stuff is so critically important, because it influences our emotional state and it influences our mindset. And that stuff does then influence your ability to achieve your goals. So I think to answer your question, I think mindset and emotions are critically important when it comes to goal setting.
I think many of us focus so much on the actions that we need to take, and I think you've all alluded to this. See in the conversation that or the comments you made earlier, Jemima and Jackie, we focus a lot on that end result and maybe the steps that we need to take to get there, but not so much on how we are and what could potentially be holding us back. One of the things I always say is that emotions either push you towards or pull you away from. And so you can often find yourself in a scenario where you feel you are taking the steps necessary to move you towards your goals, but your emotions are actually pulling you backwards. And so you're in that constant push and pull and push and pull. And that then, gets you frustrated. See, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the conversation we're having about mindset and whether you feel, mindset is important when it comes to goal setting.
Yeah, like I totally agree with what both of the ladies have said today around mindset. And I think like a really important part of it is, sort of like your story about yourself. I think in the mindset, it's a really important part because I think we have these stories that are formed from, when we were younger. And I think I didn't realize, I knew the power of it because I'd read books, etc. And, you have these conversations about your story. But I think I only realized the impact of how a story can affect you when I actually got married. Because I had these stories about myself around, that, I'm a bad leader, or I'm too impatient. And my husband would say, where are you getting these concepts? I live with you every day and I've never experienced this, right? And I think sometimes we have these stories about ourselves that come maybe from childhood, or that come from friends, or that come from maybe toxic environments that we found ourselves in that are actually not true. So I think an important part of the mindset is sort of like, like discovering what your story is and discovering where the root of that story comes from, and sort of dispelling that myth to say, I'm told that I'm bad with money, or I'm told that I can never sort of reach a healthy lifestyle, or, I'm told certain things. And I think I used to blog about money a lot. And I think when I used to interact with people would say to me, I'm not interested in getting better with money, or I'm not interested in becoming rich. I just want to be happy. And that's a story in and of itself that sort of prohibits you from actually learning about money and actually becoming good with it, right? So I think the story thing for me is extremely powerful. And I think, as you said, it's a lot of work. I think Jemima mentioned it, to say like every minute of every day, it's a lot of work to sort of overcome that story. But I think it starts with actually identifying that story. I'm bad at public speaking. I'm bad at writing slides. I'm bad at problem solving, things that are actually not true about you, things that you can actually learn, right? So I think dispelling your story and creating a new one and affirming it each and every single day, and sort of taking small actions to get better at that. If you say, I suck at exercising, but doing 10 minutes consistently every day to build that confidence, to build the confidence in that story. Because I think, the action and the confidence that you get as you take these small steps is actually very good. And I like the 52-week challenge that you guys mentioned, because I think it's also a powerful way to change your story around money, to say, if I save every week the amount that I've committed to save, I actually am a saver, and I actually can become good at saving. So I think stories and sort of dispelling them and taking the small actions to win your own belief in yourself is very important.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, C, for that. C, let me stick with you and just, carrying on our conversation. And we're talking about planning for 2021, considering the year that was. What opportunities do you think exist for young people in the year ahead? You have a really impressive resume. I did not read your entire bio, but when I first received it, I thought, wow, what is your secret?
Cool. Yeah, thank you for that. I would say actually, in terms of the opportunities, I think because like I'm in tech and engineering, it's very easy for me to say, I think the opportunities lie in this industry and in this jobs, etc. But like, I'm increasingly realizing that the biggest opportunity for young people in 2021, and I think Africans, is courage, right? I think we have a pandemic of courage as well, over and above. And I do think that in some shape or form, the actual physical pandemic has sort of, exacerbated the pandemic of courage, because now we've got COVID that has allowed us not to sort of be courageous because there's COVID, right? So I think the biggest opportunity is courage. And why I say this is, and I can just give a small personal anecdote to this. I think last year, I joined a group with 5 women who were, strong leaders in their industries. And we were sort of joining this group to sort of work on something together. Within 6 months of us working together, we had all quit our jobs. And the reason we had quit our jobs is because we were very unhappy in where we were working. And I think the leadership that we had experienced there had pushed us out, right? And I think there are stats that say that around 70% of people in work are actually disengaged, right? So I think to move from that state of, and I think that it was a really good question you asked on, like, how do you not get dragged down, right? And I think in order to excel in any industry, or to excel in yourself first, before you can even pick the industry and the trend, etc., I think there is a big opportunity around being courageous enough to have certain conversations and to push yourself to be the type of leader that you want to be before you can sort of dominate an industry or pick an industry or work in a team or succeed with other people, right? So I think the one theme is courage, and closely interlinked with that is leadership, right? So I think being courageous enough to sort of take on leadership in different roles where you are passionate is a big opportunity that we have. And I think living in Africa, it doesn't come as a surprise to us that leadership is an enabler for a lot of things, right? I think if you look at policy in education and women's rights, etc., it is all influenced by leadership. But I do think that in order to start the journey of becoming an effective leader, you need to be courageous enough to take that step. You need to be courageous enough to realize what's not working, to realize there are spaces that you need to change, to realize opportunities that you can change, and sort of take that step in becoming a leader, and also then investing in developing your leadership capabilities in order to be effective there. So I know it's not like the typical answer to say, like, these are the 5 industries, but I really do think it's courage and investment in leadership, personal leadership.
I think that is the best answer you could have given, and I agree with you 100%. 2020, I think, provided a big opportunity for many to take stock of where they were and make tough decisions about what they would like for themselves. I think that's one of the biggest lessons that I learned from 2020. And I agree with you 100% that we need to be courageous and really take the steps to creating the future we want, because no one's going to create it for us. So 100%, C, I agree with you, and I love your contribution. I'd like to go to our audience. I know we have a few individuals, we have quite a few people who are listening on YouTube. There are some who are on LinkedIn, and there are some who are on Facebook. You're all really welcome. And what I'd like to do at this time is open up for any questions that you may have for the panel. And you could ask your question as a general question, and any of the panel will answer it. Or you could have a specific question for a specific member of the panel, and so you can indicate that. I note that we already have some questions, so I'm going to go to those questions. As I go to the questions, just a shout out to our regular viewers. Dennis, it's great to have you on. Anne, thank you very much for joining. Anne says she loves your tip, Jackie. She's also doing the 52-week challenge this year, so she's going to borrow the tips that you shared. The first question here is from Valerie, and it actually comes to you, Jackie. What can be done? What can be done to employees to ensure that after the pandemic, they'll still be grounded to the organizational culture? So that comes to you, Jackie, and I'm going to beam it on the screen so that you are able to see it. So what can be done to employees to ensure that after the pandemic, they'll still be grounded to the organizational culture? Jackie, that is for you. And yeah, you can tackle that. And then we have another question from Valerie as well.
Okay, so one of the things that we all agree is that the pandemic distorted cultures that were put in place. And this is because of the hybrid of some people working from home and others in the office. So there are people who have not seen each other physically from March last year to date, right? So there are some habits, cultural habits that you used to do together, maybe team lunches. You're used to saying hello to everyone and just discussing other matters, because culture is how we do things in here. So how you're doing things in your space. And yes, there's a lot of work to be done when we come back to work fully. Some organizations still haven't, a majority haven't. So there is a lot of work that needs to to be put in place when we come to work fully. However, we have to tweak our cultures. Why? Because we are definitely not going to work on a physical location, all of us. Work is now where you are, where you can deliver whatever it is. So if you can multitask and cook and do a project at the same time, well and good, as long as you are able to deliver. And that is the mindset. That's a culture that leaders, line managers need to now inculcate in them. That as long as Jackie is able to deliver the project for me, that's fine. If Mucha was told that she needs to have a lunch and learn session that runs for 2 hours every Wednesday, how she gets it done is actually not what I want to get into. I want to get into, have you done it? Do you have a challenge? So then you need to create a culture that takes care of people delivering what they need to deliver in an environment that is still fun, that is still supportive. So look for various initiatives that you can actually undertake to bring on a culture that will work for everyone. So if it is, you need to incorporate mothers, because you see, again, some of the statistics, and you'll forgive me being in HR, a lot of some of the things that we start looking at is the hybrid is very convenient for us ladies to have more children. Sorry, see, I hope you didn't get married during the pandemic. Because, I mean, there's time and now you can get to know each other. And so there's all these things that's going to happen. So how am I going to make sure that C is still attached to the institution through how we do our things, by her being a new married lady and not throwing her out of the institution? So maybe you want to use platforms like this to have different sessions for young mothers, young married couples, different things to be able to keep people attached. And when I leave, there's something I'll miss, how we do our things. So we usually get together and people discuss this. When you're having a difficult time, there are platforms you can go, get together with different people, and you get assisted in maybe undertaking a project. Line managers are now taking care of our mental health and wellness. Are you really bothered about how people's ergonomics are? Do you care about the chairs that they use at home? You need to now create a culture, a different culture. So we are not going to bring back the culture that we used to have, but we need to review our organizational cultures so that they can embrace all types of resources that we have in the various environments that they will be. But we need to change our mindset that ideally it should be delivery of what is given to you in the highest quality within the stipulated deadlines that you are able to, and maybe giving it extraordinary outcomes. That is what I should be concerned about. So if you even come and tell me I want to do 2 days a week, I should be happy as long as you can be able to achieve those goals. I hope I've helped Valerie on that.
Thank you very much, Jackie. I think that was a great response. And the challenge really is to organizations to think differently about culture and how to really ensure the right kind of culture that gets people engaged. See mentioned, and it's true that in very many organizations, individuals are disengaged. The percentages are scary. Some of the work we do as an organization is supporting companies who are interested in understanding what the levels of engagement are. And we have seen those numbers, quite scary, how disengaged people are. And I'd like to imagine that COVID may have made that worse if the organization wasn't intentional about maintaining culture. Valerie has another question, and I think this one is one that I'd love to get insights from all three of you. How do we ensure we remain grounded to the goals that we're setting despite the uncertainty? How do we remain grounded to those goals despite the uncertainty? So we'll start with you, C, and then Jemima, and then finish with you, Jackie. What are your thoughts on this question?
Yeah, I think this is a really good question, but I think it goes back to what we said around the difference between targets and goals. I think it was Jemima that actually mentioned that, right? And I do think that there are sort of tactical things you can do from a goal setting perspective of what am I going to invest, right? So I think maybe I'll just give an example of certain things that I've done. So I've sort of like blocked out my calendar for, I think one of my goals is to work on a project that's a passion project for me. And so one of the things that I've done is I've sort of like blocked out my calendar to invest just working on that. And I think, that hour, 2 hours a day that I've actually invested in that has been so great in me seeing what needs to be done and also working with people in order to make sure that whatever it is that I need to be done gets done, right? And I think that comes to my second point, get company. I think that is super important. So last year I set a goal to say, like, I want to learn leadership. I want to become a better leader. And I want to take that step in leadership because I'd left my former employment because of poor leadership. And I made it a promise to myself that I will never, put someone else through what I went through. And so I'm investing in leadership. And what I did actually is I joined a leadership book club. And that was like so instrumental in my growth. And the second thing is I partnered with somebody from the book club, Kateho Muhono, to actually start a podcast on leadership, right? And I think partnering, and when we started our podcast, we had no idea what we were going to do. We were like not tech savvy. We were like, it was bad. But what we started, we said we're going to invest 2 hours a week on a Sunday on this podcast and we'll figure it out, right? And I think that commitment in saying, every week for 2 hours we're sitting and we're planning this was so instrumental. I think we spent 2 months just talking in that 2 hours. And then in the third month, things started happening. But I think it's that investment in saying, I'm investing 2 hours a week, or I'm investing getting company with someone, or I'm investing, that 10 Rand a week, or 10 Kenyan shillings a week in order to reach my goal, and holding yourself accountable. And I think Jackie did mention getting accountability partners, and that can look like partnerships. So I think in South Africa, especially with regards to money, we've got vehicles called stockpiles that I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that, but stockpiles are essentially group savings where you can save with other people, right? So I think get company, and I think company has been super great for me because as Jackie mentioned, we're working in isolation. Things are a lot different than they were before. And I think having someone accountable to, and having someone you can actually go on the journey with learning with, actually makes you accelerate your goals because it's dual learning, and it also helps you stay motivated, and it also makes it fun and less like work and more like a goal that you guys can accomplish together. So I think those are the two that I would recommend.
Fantastic. Jemima.
Sure. So yeah, great question, Valerie. Thank you. I agree with everything that C mentioned. Getting a massive one. That's why I do what I do, and I started my membership program. As a group, as a community, we set goals together in a monthly workshop every month. And definitely a great way to stay grounded. Two things I want to say on that, right? So the one really simple thing that I do that really helps me is reviewing your goals every single morning, guys. And I think this is the simplest thing that people forget to do, is they write down their goals and then they walk away and they maybe come back, 3 months later and they're like, oh, I didn't hit that. I didn't manage that. Oh, maybe I got that. It's not, if you want to stay intentional every day and you want to stay grounded despite all the stuff going on around you, check in with those goals every single day. And as I said at the beginning of this conversation, if your goals are actions that you can take no matter what, so if your goals are to take action every day, take an action that's going to produce the outcome you desire, you have to read them every day. You have to be reading those goals every day and looking at what they are. And so I go through a process with the women that I work through where we look at the overarching goal for a period, for the year, for the quarter, whatever it is, and then reverse engineer those goals. So reverse engineer your goal for the year to be a quarterly goal, right? Set that marker for each quarter so that you know what you need to achieve Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 to get you closer to your goal for the year. And then based off of your quarterly goals, set your monthly goals, right? And then within that month, set the actions you need to be taking every week and every day, right? And that for me, certainly that's how I stay very grounded in my goals, despite what's going on in the world, right? Despite what's happening, I know that this is my goal and maybe I'll reach it, maybe I won't, but this is the action I'm going to take, and nothing is going to stop me from taking this action today or this week or whatever it is. So yeah, that's my answer to the question. Review your goals every single day and make sure that the goals have been broken down into actionable steps that you can take every day or every week or every month.
So I'll just pick up.
Yes.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I'll just pick
up.
No,
go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll pick up just from what the other ladies have said. For you to remain focused and grounded to your goals, usually it's discipline. So first things first, you must have 3 things. So this is what I do. What are the 3 things that I must do this month? What are the 3 things that I must do this week? And what are the 3 things that I must do today? Now, if you make them more than 3, you may never get to achieve them. If you make them less, you may keep rewarding yourself all the time for overachieving. So every day I write the 3 things that I must do today, right? And it starts from the week. So it starts from the month, then the week, and then the day. And at the end of, I do a review. At the end of every month, I check, have I accomplished those 3 things? At the end of every week, I check. I review my week, I review my month, and I review my day. Sometimes there's one particular thing I realize I've ticked 2 and I've left 1. Sometimes I have to get to my machine, or if it is something I needed, I try to make sure that I do it. And if I don't, the next day I will start with 4 goals, which is already out of what my plan is. So to avoid the 4 goals, I always try to review my goals and ensure that I achieve the ones for the month, the ones for the week, and the ones for the day. And your cup of coffee, every day. Then when you're doing your reviews, please check what are the wins, what did not work, right? And basically what worked well are your wins, right? And that helps you know whether you're keeping on track or not. Now, it's very important to get organized because you will not achieve this if you're not organized. So we have been told spare maybe 1 hour a day, right? Do certain things. Please get organized. And there are 2 principles of getting organized. You always need to take notes. Because when you take notes, right, you develop your actions, which become the to-do list. So take notes so that you can get the actions of what you need to undertake. Make sure you get your to-do list because it helps you to draft your calendar. So I have taken actions, so that has formed my to-do list. So I am saying that I will attend lunch and learn at 12:30. So that goes into my calendar, right? So you must make sure that you take notes so that you have a calendar. If you don't take notes, you don't have any actions and you don't have a calendar because there's nothing to do in that particular time. So you must have 2 things. You must take notes and you must have a to-do list because that helps you get a calendar. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jackie. I read last year a book, trying to remember the author, but it was looking at the time management tips for successful people. I'm paraphrasing. And one of the things the author said was what you just concluded on, that we need to move things off our to-do list into our calendar. And, it's interesting to me how these amazing ladies are all really speaking from the same notebook, so to speak, because both Jemima and C, alluded to this fact or mentioned this fact when, C keeps talking about setting aside 2 hours on a Sunday. That's talking about a calendar, right? That's putting something down in your calendar that you are holding yourself accountable to. And for me, that was one of the most powerful things I learned in 2020, moving away from just having that list of things to do and actually putting those things into your diary. We have a few more questions here that have come through, so I want to jump to them. I'm keeping my eye on the time. Jones just commented here that she's loving the conversation, and it's really important to check mindset daily because if I want high vibes, I must match the vibration. So that's a comment that she made from an earlier point that was made by the panel. So we have two questions I see. So one here is from Anne. Anne says, as a young person living in Africa, I struggle with courage. How do I curve out of my comfort zone and be courageous without the fear of failing? So see, earlier you talked about how the greatest opportunity was for courage. Would you like to tackle this one?
Yeah, I really think it's a good question, and I think it's not easy to sort of like be courageous. It's really not easy, but I think what I have done psychologically in terms of courage is to just wake up and do it anyway, regardless of how you feel, right? Because I do think that it is our feelings that sort of hold us back, right, from actually doing it. So this book that I read, I'm not sure if some of you guys have heard of it, but it's called the 5 a.m. Club, right? And what I really like about the 5 a.m. Club is the author also gives, tactics on like how it is that you can join the 5 a.m. Club. And he speaks about this concept of the power hour, right? And the power hour is sort of like a time within which you can sort of focus on your soul set, your mindset, your heart set, and your physical set, if there's ever such a word, right? And I do think that before you can sort of, be effective in your steps of courage, it's important that all those four things align, right? And I think a very important part of taking that courage is sort of getting yourself out of that comfort zone. So maybe trying the 5 a.m. Club. So he says, don't have your phone by the side of your bed and have an alarm clock that wakes you up. And so that act of in the morning, every single day, not listening to your feelings and waking up to actually have the power hour, I think is one physical step that you can take towards investing in activities that desire courage. Because I do think that courage is something that you build over time, and it comes with confidence in yourself. And I think it's something that you have to routinely invest in yourself in order to build. It's something that's developed, not discovered. I think that's very important. So I think start with something that is out of your comfort zone. It could be trying the 5 a.m. Club. I do recommend like trying the 5 a.m. Club, having your power hour and getting uncomfortable very early in the morning and getting yourself in that routine. And he also mentions around a time frame that I think it's 66 days. I think he says there's a 66-day rule to say if you want to form a new courageous habit or any sort of habit, it takes you about 66 days of doing that, right? So I think do something for a consistent amount of time and maybe, again, invite company, hold yourself accountable to do it for that 66 days and see it through. And I think by the end of that 66 days, you will see yourself having been transformed and you will see yourself building that discipline that Jackie was speaking about in order to be courageous. Because I do think in developing courage, discipline is also a big part of it. And I think, and just like a parting shot, our church also has, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, like a 21-day fast, where you sort of fast something for 21 days. And I think doing things like that, where you have community and you're building that muscle of discipline, of focus, of having a bigger goal is very, very important in building courage. Because as I said, it's developed, not discovered.
Courage is developed, not discouraged. I think that this Lunch and Learn has so many takeaways that we can all apply. I really love that statement. Yes, Jemima, I knew you would have something you'd want to say. Go ahead.
Sorry, guys. I really want to just speak on this question, Anne. This is such a great question.
Go ahead.
This is such a great question, and I love, Mucha will tell you as well, I love talking about fear. I think this is such a good conversation, and just to continue on from what C said, and I think the one thing, everyone listening, I think the one thing to remember and to keep in mind is you can feel afraid and you can still act, okay? We are the only living being on this planet that can feel something and act a different way. We're the only living organism on this planet, right? A cat feels afraid, it's going to run. It doesn't have that cognitive ability to make a decision independent of the way it's feeling. We have that ability. We have that ability to make decisions despite how we're feeling. And so that's the first thing I want to say about fear. The second thing I want to say about fear, Anne, is you've really got to start exploring it, guys. Fear is not a bad thing. Fear is not, it's not a negative thing. And it's not enough just to go, I'm feeling afraid. So the first step is being able to identify it, right? To be able to go, I'm feeling afraid. I'm too afraid to do this thing. So I'm just going to push through and I'm going to do it, right? That's the first step. That's great. But I really want to push you guys a little bit further. And I want to ask you, start exploring the fear, right? Because it's not rational, okay? Fear is only rational if your life is at risk, okay? If there's a lion suddenly in your garden, then your fear is justified, okay? But for the most part, unless your life is at risk, your fear is completely unjustified. And so start exploring where it's coming from, okay? Because it's coming more often than not, it's coming from some kind of trauma or past experience in your childhood. Oh, I'm too scared to speak on stage, probably because one day you were made to get up on stage at school and sing a song and somebody threw fruit at you and you're never going to do it again, okay? It's not. So explore where those fears are coming from. That's really what I want to encourage all of you to do if you're feeling afraid. And we all do it. We all feel afraid. So have that grace on yourself, but start looking at where it's coming from, where it was founded.
You bring up a really important point, Jemima. We have typically labeled our emotions as good emotions and bad emotions. And yet emotions are just data. There's no good or bad. Every emotion has insight. And so when you feel that fear, when you feel that discomfort, when you feel all those emotions that you would label bad that are holding you back from moving forward, stepping out of your comfort zone, the work that needs to be done there is understanding what insight you're getting from that emotion. It's asking yourself, what is this emotion trying to tell me? Because at the end of the day, every emotion has insight. And perhaps that emotion is telling you exactly what Jemima said. There's something in your past that is triggering that fear. The key is to understand that emotions are insight and to try and dig deeper to understand what that insight is. Emotions are meant to help us. They're not meant to hinder us. And they only really hinder us because we're not paying attention. We're not actually stopping to think, what is it that I'm feeling? Why am I feeling that? And when we do that work, and earlier we had the conversation and all three panelists talk about doing that inner work. When we do that inner work, we're able to use our emotions as a strategic resource. But don't get me started talking about emotions because we'll be here until tomorrow. I have another question that I want to get to before we end, before we start coming to the wrapping up. And this is from Sofina. So Sofina says, how do leaders help their teams to get balance between tasks that drive them towards strategic goals and the day-to-day tasks? Sometimes day-to-day survival can be overwhelming and we actually lose focus. This is a fantastic question, and I will open this out to anyone who wants to jump in and share their thoughts. So how do we, as leaders, help teams get balance between the tasks that are moving them strategically? So if you think about the time quadrant, these are the quadrant 2 tasks that are really about strategy and moving forward, and then the day-to-day, especially where we are stuck in this survival mode. So anyone who would like to answer that one?
Yeah, I think I can jump in here because I think I've been caught in the rut of the day-to-day. And I think what has really helped me, and I think this is something I've implemented with my team, is sort of get the bigger understanding of what it is that we're trying to solve, right? And I think what I've even done in like the trackers I've created is sort of like I'll have a big column that says like the strategic pillar or the strategic outcome is this. and then have all the initiatives that we have that are driving this and the KPIs that follow into that. And I think in consulting, we call these driver trees to say, like, this is what's driving this, right? And I think it's such an amazing tool for focus, because if you're trying to solve this big problem, right, bite-sizing it and also segmenting the drivers that go into solving that problem is very important. And I think having that, and I think Jemima mentioned that she tracks her goals every day, right? And I think this cadence of every day looking at the initiative and saying, okay, my initiative or my task was to sort of solve this problem X, Y, and Z, right? What am I going to do today to make sure that this bigger problem is being solved? And I think what we used to do in consulting, every single morning we'd have like swim lanes of the different, what we call work streams that we're trying to solve, right? So if one was to increase productivity by 20% for the client, you would come that day and you would write down, this is what I'm going to do today based on what I said I'm going to do yesterday in order to reach this target, right? And I think that is such a focused way of doing things, because we would check out at the end of the day to say, have I done it? What is remaining? What do I need to do tomorrow, right? And I think those sessions were less updating sessions, but more also problem-solving sessions, because the whole team would say, I can see that you want to do X, Y, and Z tasks, but have you thought about this task that could also be a lever in this way, right? So now it's the overall strategy that you've set in the tracker, and now it's the dynamic day by day to say, okay, these are the tasks that you're doing. You've seen that maybe X, Y, and Z is not working, but I've had a conversation yesterday with this person that I think might add value to what you need to do today to solve your problem tomorrow. So I think that is a great management tool that I think really was impactful in us, meeting our problems and solving them within 6 weeks in consulting, that I still apply today, and it's really helping me in my job at Uber.
That's a fantastic recommendation, C. And I like the idea of having the overall vision a constant reminder. So constantly looking. And I think
every day,
if we think about it in our personal lives, that's like the equivalent of having the vision board that is before you on a daily basis. So every morning you're looking at this vision board. And so you're clear in your mind that these steps I'm taking are leading me towards achieving the things on my vision board. I love that. Jackie, Jemima, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I did want to add something. Sorry. Safina, great question. And C, I love the practical advice that you're giving. I think that's very, very powerful, the suggestions that you're making. Safina, I want to just point out that the answer to your question is in your question. The answer to your question is in your question. And you talk about sometimes the day-to-day survival stuff can be overwhelming and we lose focus. And that is the answer, right? Is you're getting distracted by being in survival mode, okay? And so what I say to the women that I coach, what I say to the amazing, amazing business owners and entrepreneurs that I get to work with is, what are the activities that are going to move the needle forward in your business today? Okay, because that's where you need to be focusing, right? The things that are going to move the needle forward. Just as C said, it's identifying the stuff that's really going to make a difference. And what I see happen so often with women particularly is that we have a very skewed idea of what makes us worthy of the success and the achievements and the results that we want. And what we've come to believe somewhere along the line is that the only way we're worthy of the outcomes we want is to put in loads and loads of time. Okay. And so what we do is we go, well, I want this result at the end of the month, so let me sit down at my laptop and get some work done for 2 hours, right? But we're not intentional about the action we're taking. And then we get caught up and we get distracted by the small tasks, and we're not doing the things that move the needle forward, right? And so what I encourage all of you to do is two things, right? Is start looking at where you're placing your value, right? Start looking at the thing. What are you making your value mean, right? Where are you placing that value on your worth? And I would really start to look at that. And the other thing that I encourage you to start doing is looking at where you're distracting yourself with the smaller day-to-day tasks, usually because there's something you don't want to do. Right? It's usually because there's something on that list that you don't want to do. And it's that one thing that you don't want to do that is probably going to make the biggest difference in your business. Okay, so I always say to people as well, if your to-do list is like a mile long, I don't mind if you do one thing off for today, as long as it's the scariest thing. I want you to do just the scariest thing on your list of things to do today, because that more often than not is going to be the thing that moves the needle forward in your business. It's my 2 cents on that question.
Jackie, I think you wanted to share. I can get your brief thoughts. I'm looking at the time. I'm like, oh my gosh, where has the time gone? Jackie, your thoughts on this question?
Now, usually, yes, we can go over and over with these amazing ladies and keep contributing. So,
yes,
strategic goals have strategic initiatives. So the strategic goals that you have some initiatives that you need to undertake. Now, what you need to do is pick up those initiatives, like, for example, HR, pick up the initiatives. Maybe the initiative is to improve employee engagement. And then we will have different actions that we need to undertake. One, ensure that we respond to staff within 24 hours. Okay? How does my day-to-day task contribute to this initiative? So you always have to find what is your day-to-day task contributing to, because it also helps you to prioritize, right? So if we are supposed to be responding to staff in 24 hours because we are increasing the employee experience and therefore improving our employee engagement, then my day-to-day task is to set aside 2 hours to ensure that I'm always checking on the emails and I'm always responding to those emails, right? So that means that you feel satisfied. What does it mean for, and I think I gave this example elsewhere, what does it mean for the person who makes your tea? How can that person contribute to the strategic goals? So they simply need to know what is the organization doing. So leaders cascading to their teams what the strategic goals are, initiatives, and the actions that people need to take, and then allow your team members to be creative and innovative with the actions, as long as it's helping to meet the strategic goal. So there's a very tough goal that the company needs to double its revenue. And so you'll find that maybe the person making tea for us will wonder, how the hell am I going to contribute to that? And I usually say it's very simple. And I'll give the same example I gave. So you, as the person who makes tea, you want to come at 8 o'clock when I am coming at 8 o'clock. And maybe for me to come at 8 o'clock, I have to leave my place in Kenya. Traffic is back now, and it's not anything interesting because a lot of the roads are all under construction. So I need to leave my house at maybe 5:30 a.m. Now, I didn't have breakfast, clearly. So there's a customer who is expecting me to respond to them, and oh my goodness, I don't even want to see these customer emails. I don't want to see these concerns. I've not even had breakfast. And then the tea person has also come at 8 o'clock with us. So I am so distracted due to the surroundings around what makes me come to work. Now, if that tea person says, you know what, I just want to give these people a smile every time they come to the office. So what do I need to do? Maybe I come at 6:30 and I make tea. So when they come, I just say, hi, good morning. Your cup of tea is here. Is there anything else you'd want me to get for you so that I can go and get it for you? My goodness, pumped up. You've started my day so well. I really just needed that tea. And, you know, out of just that small gesture, I will also just treat the next person like that. Now, if I treat that customer, remember, I am the one who's dealing with the customer issue. So I start with them in the morning. Whatever I am working is generating revenue. Then, of course, I am contributing towards that. So you allow people in their smaller ways. And then this tea person can motivate themselves and say, you know, because I come earlier, I don't get traffic like you. I perhaps pay a cheaper transport fare and all that. So you need to ensure that you allow your team leaders to come up with creative ideas on how their day-to-day activities still end up contributing to the overall goal. And you need to make sure that you cascade. What are the goals? What are the initiatives? So that the actions, we can generate our own actions that contribute towards that.
Thank you very much. Wow, ladies, this conversation has been so amazing. I'm looking at the time, and time is pretty much up. I'd like you to give me your 30-second parting shot. 30 seconds, ladies, because we are winding down the clock. So we've been talking today about planning for the year ahead, and there's some key takeaways that I have noted, but I'd love each of you to give your 30-second parting shot. So Jackie, let's stay with you since you just finished speaking, and as you're unmuting yourself, Sophina says, Jemima, you'll be pleased to know my scary task today is goal setting, and I've been putting it off all week. It will be done today. Awesome, Sophina. Sophina's tuned in all the way from the UK. So great to have you online, Sophina. Jackie, your parting shot.
For me, 2021, I just want to say, please invest in some very critical skills. And those skills are, number one, invest in creativity, emotional intelligence, analytical and critical thinking. Remember, I said we need to come up with our own actions. Active learning mindset. You must learn every day, right? Interpersonal communication skills. You can, with this thing of distance, we cannot see each other. You need to have to communicate better. Leadership skills. You don't need to have the title to be a leader. You just need to do something different. And finally, diversity and cultural intelligence, for the purpose that you see, like now, C is in South Africa. I don't know where Jemima is. I'm in Kenya. Diverse cultures, but somehow we've got to connect through this. So you also have to have that diversity and cultural intelligence. That's my parting shot.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jackie. Jemima is in South Africa as well, actually, in Cape Town. Jemima, your parting shot.
Sure. So, guys, everyone watching, my parting shot is just 2021 is going to be amazing. I feel like there's been a massive conscious awakening around the world for most people. This is proof of that. This is evidence of that. And so the thing I want to leave you all with is to go out every day with intention, guys. So much intention in everything you do, everything you say, every decision you make. Be super intentional, be super empowered. Don't forget that we're all super empowered. Go out with courage, believe in yourself, work on that sense of self-worth, because we're all so capable and we're so able. And I just want to see everybody succeed massively this year. So that's what I want to leave you with.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jemima. See your parting shot.
Yeah, I think mine is sweet and short. It's that greatness is developed, not discovered, and you don't have to walk this journey alone.
Wow, sweet and short indeed. I love that. Greatness is discovered, right? No. Say that again, see.
Developed, not discovered.
Developed, not discovered. I was trying to write it down. You said it so fast, I didn't get to write it down. Fantastic. Thank you so much, ladies. A big shout out to each of you. A big shout out, Jackie Ogonji. Thank you so much for sharing all your amazing insights. Shout out to C. Thank you so much for tuning in and being here today. I've really enjoyed. And a big thank you to Jemima. Thank you very much for contributing to our session today. Has it not been an amazing session as we've kicked off 2021 with our EQ Lunch and Learn series? My 3 takeaways. Number 1, keep your side of the street clean. Work on yourself. Focus on yourself. Do that deep work, and that will generate results that will blow your mind. Another takeaway is, what stories are you telling yourself? It's really important that we really look and take note of the stories we're telling ourselves and change those stories. You don't have to continue existing based on a narrative that was fed to you, a narrative that you heard, or a narrative that somehow is part of who you are today. You have the power to change that. And then have an active learning mindset. The future is ours. It's available for the taking, but we must invest in ourselves. Obviously, one of the things that I will say is important to investing is emotional intelligence. And on that note, I'd like to tell you about our upcoming training, EQ 101 webinar, where you will learn emotional intelligence techniques that will help you to understand your EQ levels and better understand your strengths and weaknesses, help you to understand how emotions work, how your emotions are influencing you at work, how emotions could be holding you back from achieving all that you want to achieve at work. The workshop will also help you to take control of your thoughts and navigate your emotional state. And lastly, to reduce stress so it doesn't build up, making you more susceptible to negative emotional reactions. This webinar series is for anyone who is interested in leveraging emotional intelligence to successfully navigate the human factor at work. And I'm going to post a link so that you can follow the link and learn more about this webinar that we are running next month. And it is available. It will be an online webinar that is available to anyone who's tuned in. The cost of the webinar is 1,250 shillings. But for all those who've tuned in today, you can take advantage of the early bird offering of 1,000 shillings. So please feel free to reach out to us. Go onto the link, reach out to us in any of the different ways that you know to reach out to us and learn more about this webinar. Why is it important? Well, it's important because we all know that emotional intelligence is a critical skill. Many people believe that intelligence, otherwise known as IQ, is what determines success. But decades of research shows that people with average IQ outperform those with higher IQ 70% of the time. And the missing link is emotional intelligence. Thank you for being with me, Mucha Mlingo, your host for today's session. I look forward to having you on this next EQ Lunch and Learn. The EQ Lunch and Learn is always on the last Wednesday of the month at 12:30 East Africa time. Looking forward to engaging with you. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me and my amazing panel today. Enjoy the rest of your day.